All right. We'll call the Belvedere City Council Committee of the Whole of July 26th to order. The clerk will call the roll, please.
Brereton will be absent. Fleury.
Present.
Frank.
Here.
Freeman.
Here.
McGee.
Here.
Maha.
Here.
Porter.
Here.
Prather.
Present.
Snow.
Here.
Stevens.
Here.
9 present.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment?
No, we do not.
We do not have any public comment tonight. No public forum. Reports of officers, boards, and special committees. Public safety, unfinished business. We have none. Item 2, public safety, new business. We have item A, fire department firefighter recognitions. Chief Heiser.
I want to recognize some of our firefighters here tonight. I also want to acknowledge the family that was involved in a structure fire on June 18th. They're sitting here with us tonight, so thanks for coming. In the early morning hours of June 18th, while most people were sleeping soundly, our firefighters were going to work. A fire broke out in the 100 block of West 2nd Street. The call came in as a house fire with people trapped. In my 26 plus years in the fire service, I can count these types of calls on one hand. The group of men who were on duty that morning are with us here tonight. Captain Letourneau in A shift. I responded from my house, and as I went to the command post, I noticed the dark, angry smoke that was coming from this home. And I thought to myself, nobody could be alive in this house. I met up with Captain Letourneau. He informed me of reports of a young person trapped in the upstairs. This is where I saw the absolute best in my firefighters. Lieutenant Draw, probationary firefighter Vandenbroek were assigned to search. Knowing the victim could only be in the upstairs, they attempted to reach her by the interior stairs. They were driven back by extreme heat in the stairwell. Later, we found out the stairs were burned out, and if the lieutenant and the firefighter continued, they probably would have fell through to the first floor, causing serious injury to themselves. Lieutenant Draw, firefighter Vandenbroek, they both attempted to enter the upstairs by ladder on the east end of the house. Again, they were met with obstacles and they were turned back. At this time, off-duty firefighter Thornton arrived and asked what we needed from him. We decided to do a vent inner search. Flames were knocked down just enough to throw a ladder to the west end of the house where firefighter Thornton went in to the upstairs bedroom, and within minutes he came to the window with a young girl, handing her to Lieutenant Draw and then Vandenbroek, and then to the Lifeline paramedics who were waiting down below. The final outcome was, of course, not what we wanted. The young girl, she passed away the next day at a local hospital. Her name was Promise K. Slater. She was 18 years old. I told my guys, I said, we typically don't have honor events when a person passes away, but I felt this incident was different. That morning, I witnessed the best of Belvedere and Boone County's first responders and their willingness to lay down their lives to save another. Tonight, we're going to acknowledge that effort. First up, Lieutenant Draw, Certificate of Valor presented to Lieutenant Dan Draw on this 26th day of July, 2021, for your courage and extreme rescue efforts during a tragic house fire on the morning of June 18th, 2021. Thank you. Certificate of Valor presented to firefighter Nicholas Thornton on his 26th day of July 2021 for your courage and extreme rescue efforts during a tragic house fire in the morning of June 18th, 2021. Thank you, sir. And finally, certificate of valor presented to firefighter Troy Vandenbroek on this 26th day of July 2021 for your courage and extreme efforts during the tragic house fire in the morning of June 18th, 2021. Thanks, Troy. And again, Mandy, thank you for coming here tonight. I know how difficult that's got to be. Thank you for coming here and just acknowledging a little bit of what we have going on here today. So, with that, I am closing. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Mayor.
To the family that came here this evening, on behalf of the City Council and on behalf of the entire city, we certainly offer you our condolences and our sympathy. We know how difficult it is, and we wish you the best. If there's anything we can do, please let us know. And thank you for coming tonight. And for Captain Letourneau, Lieutenant Drawl, firefighters Thornton and Vandenbroek, thank you very much for your service. That's not an easy task by any means, and it's a tough one that we all have to live with, but sometimes those things can't just, that's the best we can do, and I know that was the best that we tried. So for that, we're grateful, and I thank you very much. So, Chief, you have an update for us?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you.
Since our last report, the fire department has responded to 288 calls for emergency service during that 30-day period. We're 80 calls ahead of this time last year for an average of 9 calls per day. To date, the department has responded to 1,859 calls for emergency service. The department applied for the Office of the State Fire Marshal Small Equipment Grant. The grant, worth $26,000, was denied for the second year in a row. We have requested an appeal on their findings, and we're told that they would pull out our application and get back to us. I'm still waiting. We also will be resubmitting this grant application in August. The grant money, if received, is for a set of hydraulic battery-operated extrication tools. Our rapid response vehicle, Rescue 142, is now EMS certified, and it will be in use as manning allows. Council has already approved a new command vehicle, a Ford Expedition, which is still on order. I placed that order in December 2020. Due to the chip shortage, Ford is behind in production of public safety SUVs. The department has 2 firefighters out with strains and tears requiring rehab and surgery. One firefighter is possibly due back at the end of August, while the other could be out until October. Overtime will be increasing in order to maintain a 7-man minimum staffing. Thanks for the opportunity to provide this update. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Chief. Item C, Police Department, Chief Woody, you have an update?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few notable items since the last time that I had provided an update. Detectives, for those of you that didn't see the press releases over the weekend, were able to obtain an arrest warrant for 42-year-old Daniel Lamb of Belvedere for predatory criminal sexual assault of a child, criminal sexual assault, and aggravated criminal sexual abuse. His bond is $500,000, 10%, and currently lodged in the Illinois Department of Corrections. Detectives also arrested Christopher Hearns for 4 counts of child pornography, 1 count of dissemination of child pornography, both Class X felonies, which are punishable by 6 to 30 years in the Illinois Department of Corrections. His bond is $250,000, 10%. Patrol officers responded to the ice rink at Doty Park for an ambulance call for a subject not breathing and unresponsive. Officer Bogdanis and Sergeant Bird performed CPR chest compressions while Belvedere Fire arrived and assisted. Off-duty paramedic from Superior Ambulance was also on scene watching his son play hockey, immediately started chest compressions until relieved by Officer Bogdanis and Sergeant Bird and Belvedere Fire Department. Victim was revived on scene and transported by Lifeline to St. Anthony Medical Center, where he ultimately survived. Officer Schutz responded to a vehicle parked in the roadway on Ibsen Road, south of Newburgh, with the driver slumped over. 26-year-old driver refused all field sobriety testing. Officer Schutz obtained a warrant for blood and urine. During the search of the suspect, located numerous pills which field tested positive for ecstasy. Ultimately, the driver was arrested for obstructing, driving under the influence of controlled substance, and possession of controlled substance. Just recently, last week, Fire and Police Commission extended offers of employment to 3 lateral hires for the police department. Swearing in date, August 6th, 2021 at 10 a.m. here in council chambers. There's still 1 position open, and I would anticipate that to be filled in January, which is our next confirmed date for the academy at Police Training Institute. Over the weekend, Wycliffe had 3 car burglaries, and with working with the residents in that neighborhood, we were able to make an arrest of a juvenile for those car burglaries. And thanks to Alderman Freeman, who provided some information regarding a camera grant, we were able to apply for and are in the final stages of obtaining a grant from Illinois Training and Standards Board in excess of $33,000. So thank you for that. I'd just like to read an email that I had received from a resident here in Boone County regarding the COSAP position. Just so everybody understands, I did get permission from both the mother who wrote the email as well as her son to divulge their names. The email says, "Hello, my name is Angela McCollum, Thomas and Stephen McCollum's mom. I want to thank you." She wrote this to Officer Schwartz. "I want to thank you and Allie for getting Tom into rehab tonight. He's been fighting his addiction, has been trying to get into rehab for a long time. It seemed no one was willing to help him. Then you and Allie came along. We thought all hope was lost. Thank you so much for caring about my children's health and well-being. The outreach program's the best thing you could have ever done. It is the one hope for our family and our city. You were there when no one else would help us. Thank you for trying to save the children and adults in our city. Many people still believe in our police department and all the officers that risk their lives to keep us safe. I'm definitely one of them. Please make sure the police chief reads this message. He needs to know that you are making a difference in our lives. Stay safe, and I know how much I appreciate all of you." So, one last thing, the traffic enforcement results for the Appleton enforcement detail that the department did back in April. For those of you who may not have been here, the city received a complaint regarding speeders along Appleton from the railroad tracks to the bypass. So the police department responded with just doing some traffic enforcement details at various times throughout the day, in conjunction with putting out the speed trailer. Once we were able to ascertain a day of time that we were getting more speeders than others, then we went ahead and did more formal traffic details from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. So from April 14th to the 28th, the police department did 38 traffic details observed 1,789 vehicles, top speed of 55 miles per hour, issued 6 citations, 11 warnings, and resulted in 1 arrest. I'll go ahead and field any questions that you may have.
Alderwoman Freeman first, then Alderman Snow.
Thank you. So Chief Woody and I think Chief Heiser, it seems to be like I don't get to the north side of town a lot because I live on the south side, but seems like whenever I am over there, there's like an accident at Appleton and Business 20 more than ever before. So do you guys think, and I guess this would be for Brent, would it be feasible to put a stoplight that is on, arrow only, left turn on the green arrow only? I think a lot of them are being caused by people trying to turn left on the green light where people are coming straight.
We can check with IDOT. IDOT jurisdiction has 2 of those legs of the intersection, so whatever we do there would be in conjunction with IDOT. I can tell you that that intersection is on our top 5 every year for crashes, and it's been reviewed previously, but there's no clear trends, at least up till now, as far as types and different types. But we can certainly look at that, yes.
Thank you.
Alderman Snow.
Chief Woody, you had mentioned that the first guy got arrested, Mr. Lamb, and he's in the Department of Corrections as opposed to Boone County. What's the scoop there?
Scoop is he is in the Department of Corrections on an unrelated issue.
So we just caught up with him.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Alderman Porter.
Yeah, Chief, I just had one question. When you do a lateral hire, do they get any additional training, like city training and that type of thing, or are they pretty much ready to go?
No, they still go through our field training process. It may be an expedited process depending on their knowledge and experience prior to coming to our department. But the FTOs will still assess their experience level and then guide them through whatever they may need to know in terms of laws, ordinances. But typically we anticipate them to learn how not only to be the police, but more specifically the Belvedere Police, because a lot of jurisdictions and communities do have different ways of policing.
Anybody else have anything for Chief Woody? No? Thank you, Chief. And thank you, Alderwoman Freeman, for your diligence in helping the city with the $33,000 grant. I appreciate it. I know the residents do, so thank you very much. Item 3, Finance and Personnel Unfinished Business. We have none. Finance and Personnel, item 4, Finance and Personnel New Business. Finance Department update. Shannon Hanson.
Thank you, Mayor Morris. Just a couple of updates since the last meeting. We have submitted and received approval on final performance and financial reports regarding 2 grants that were used towards the Poplar Grove and Lawrenceville Road intersection work. Did attend a webinar this morning on the American Rescue Plan Act, which is just a continuation of the COVID finance assistance. Cities in line to receive $3.4 million, payable 1/2 this year and 1/2 at 12 months from the first installment. Documentation is due by September 30th, so hopefully by the end of October we'll see the first half of the payments, and then we do continue to provide documentation to the auditors with the goal for them to present at the September 20th City Council meeting.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Ms. Hanson? No, that's the best news I've heard all night. Thank you. Item 4B, we have an appointment of Daniel Arivalo to the Ida Public Library Board.
Excuse me.
Bless you. Motion by Alderman Snow. Do we have a second? Second by Alderwoman Mohau. Any discussion regarding that? Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. And under 5, we'll move to 5 other. We have the Fairgraham Stormwater Utility Presentation and Discussion. And I apologize, sir, I don't know your name. I don't think we've ever met, so.
Yeah, I can introduce myself.
Absolutely.
Walk up to the podium.
Sure.
So as Mr. Mackey's going up, just a way of background, just about a year ago in August of 2020, Fairgraham had presented to the city the results of the feasibility study for our stormwater utility proposition, and that study didn't conclude that it was feasible for a stormwater utility that the city may adopt. And it also outlined an implementation plan for the establishment of that stormwater utility. As you know, then COVID took effect, things came to a halt, and the next step in the implementation process would be to do the community outreach, public outreach, talk to our big property owners, landowners, as well as institutional schools, churches, as well as our residents as well, to educate them on what a stormwater utility is, what it does, and the benefits thereof. And basically it was put on hold to do that because of COVID. Now with the COVID restrictions lessened at this point, we felt it was time to bring this back up before council to move it forward. Note that the motion that was tabled was a motion to approve Task 2 outreach portion of the proposal from Fairgraham in an amount not to exceed $37,190. That motion was tabled at the Public Works Committee meeting, so any action on that motion and the tabling would be done at our next Public Works Committee meeting. So the purpose tonight is just to kind of bring the council back up to speed on where we are at that process, and then we'll have this on the agenda for our next Public Works Committee meeting in 2 weeks, or whatever that time frame is, our August meeting, for further discussion. With that, Jeff Mackey from Fairgraham is here to complete a review for us.
Great. Thanks, Brent. You stole my thunder. That was pretty much the whole presentation.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I'm Jeff Mackey with Fairgraham. I do want to mention up front, my wife is 39 weeks pregnant, so my phone is on. If I get the call, see you guys later.
You bet.
But yeah, that'll be kid number 3 for me, even though I look like I just graduated college. So I'm here tonight to, as Brent mentioned, talk about the stormwater utility, continue this conversation that we have been having over the past couple of years. Fairgraham does engineering and environmental consulting services, but a big part of our business is community funding and financing. We have staff, full-time staff dedicated to community funding resources, and so that's how we got involved here in Belvedere. Looking back to 2018, there was a major rainstorm that impacted a lot of residents here in Belvedere. There was a lot of flooding, and so the council at that time pursued looking at solutions that could help alleviate the flooding. And of course that came at a large cost, and so they started to investigate different options to fund the projects that would be needed to alleviate the flooding. And one of those options was this stormwater utility. And so in 2019, Fairgraham was hired to complete the study that Brent mentioned. And we completed it in 2020, brought it to the council, reviewed that. That document's available if you want to read into that. And more or less my purpose today is to give a very high level overview of what a stormwater utility is, and what that looks like for this community. I know that there's new council members, and some of you weren't involved in the initial conversations, so hopefully this is helpful. for you to understand and just refresher for everyone else. So essentially, stormwater utility is a municipal funding tool. And in the most basic sense, the change that occurs is that rather than funding your stormwater program and stormwater improvements out of your general fund, like you do for road projects, you would create a separate fund for stormwater that you would use to pay for stormwater projects. And this is the exact same thing that is done for your water system and your sewer system. It's not implemented across all communities in Illinois, but there are many communities in Illinois that do structure their stormwater program in this way. So similar to your water and sewer, you're assessing a fee based on the level of service provided, in this case, stormwaters and drainage. And in order to budget how much revenue is needed, there's three main components. You've got your operations and maintenance, and that's a cost that stays pretty much constant throughout the year. There are MS4 state of Illinois permit requirements that the city has to pay for, and that is also a fairly consistent expense. And then finally, there's capital improvements. So those projects that the city would want to fund get added to the first two that I mentioned, and the whole of those is then spread throughout the community and assessed as a user fee rather than paying out of your general fund. And it's up to the city's discretion as far as how many projects and how quickly they want to construct them. So that last item really is dictated by the city. And then finally, I want to highlight this structure also allows for additional funding options. So firstly, you can use revenue bonds to fund stormwater projects because you have dedicated revenue for stormwater. And that's opposed to a general obligation bond. So, something that the city would be reliant on their capacity as a whole to fund. This provides a way to get a loan or a bond just based on the revenue that you collect for stormwater. Secondly, I think more significantly, you'll be able to participate in the state's IEPA low-interest loan program. The requirement of that loan program is that you have dedicated funding, and so you wouldn't be able to just budget that in your general fund. You'd have to have some sort of dedicated funding to show that you can pay back the loan. And not only are they low-interest loans, but there's also principal forgiveness for communities that qualify. And in some situations, the principal forgiveness outweighs the interest that you would pay, and essentially you get a 0% interest loan to pay for capital projects. So there's real advantages to having access to that funding program, and we do that consistently with other communities for water, sewer, and stormwater. We're working right now with the city of Freeport, and similarly, they have flooding issues, so they're just taking their top 5 projects and they're getting them lined up for the IEPA loan program to take advantage of the principal forgiveness and the low interest rates to be able to, get more bang for their buck and get progress on their program. And then finally, to take advantage of state and federal grants, typically you'll need a match. And so this would be another way to bring community into your, bring funding into your community. So what does that look like? The next page details the user rate charges that were completed for the study. This is budgeted for $825,000 of revenue, and $75,000 of that is for the operations and maintenance and the permit requirement. And then at that time, the Public Works and our work determined that $750,000 would be a good way to start implementing the projects and building revenue to alleviate the flooding. But that, again, as I highlighted earlier, is not a set number. And And so what you see in terms of the fees here is, based on that revenue, but if you didn't want to build as many capital projects, then the associated fees go down. If you wanted to build more projects, the associated fees go up. And so that's essentially how that works, and that's where we landed for the study that we presented last year. And these are typical bi-monthly fees, so paid every 2 months for sites, based on whether it's commercial, nonprofit, and then a single-family rate. And then as a way of comparing, if you look at the next page, and I don't know if this is in color, but kind of towards the lower end, that's where the city of Belvedere's fee ends up, $367 per month. So not only can you see that, many other communities in Illinois are using this as a way to fund projects, but this also, based on the program that was laid out in the study, is by comparison an affordable user structure or user rate structure. So that's the high level overview. As Brent mentioned, we left off tabling the discussion due to COVID, so it's to the council to decide what it wants to do next with the public outreach, and then beyond that, you have the actual implementation phase where you finalize the budget for your stormwater program, and then that will help finalize the rates. And the last council action would be to actually draft and pass an ordinance that would make this the new structure for the stormwater program. So that's it. Are there any questions?
Alderman Snow?
So in the realm of using this revenue source, these would be dedicated funds that would only be used for that purpose. They couldn't be sucked into the general fund, as opposed to if we were to try to collect this in the property tax version of people, then that could ultimately get sucked into the general fund, because there wouldn't, I assume, not a designated way to separate that. I'm just asking the question, and he may not have that answer, but.
Yeah, so it would be a much more direct way to fund the program, because you're collecting it based on a user fee for stormwater, and then you can only pay for stormwater projects in your stormwater program out of that fund, and that adds a level of transparency as well, because that gets audited along with everything else in the city's budget.
And the other question is, if we were to implement this and we would come up with an ordinance that would set the rate, is there anything we could, I assume, over the course of time, increase or decrease that rate as we saw fit? And that would just be a matter of redoing the ordinance, or is that something that would be something that comes up like with the sewer and water rates, just comes up?
It'd be no different than your sewer and water rates. You can amend the amount charged pretty much at will. Obviously, you'd have to keep the amount charged on the user fees roughly equivalent to what you need to operate the system. You can't make a profit at it. But certainly can reduce it or increase it, or one of the things I talked about doing was actually putting in a method by which people could reduce their bill by taking mitigation measures to decrease their impact upon the storm sewer system. So if you had a fee of X, it could be X minus 2 if you implement the control measures that we would put in place. So there's a lot. This is something we do with our home rule authority, and we can pretty much design it within reason any way we want to.
Continue.
Well, since the attorney brought up home rule, are we still under home rule, or we don't know yet? Just out of curiosity.
You are under home rule at this point. We don't know the census results yet. Even if the census results have it drop below 25,000, we will still be home rule. We'll just have to have a referendum at it in the future on that issue.
Thank you. Alderwoman Freeman.
Thank you. I think my questions are for Brent. So I know that not everybody has this because they weren't here in July of 2020 when we got it, but I have a bunch of notes in here. So by my calculations, this whole thing on page 14 was going to come out to be like $9.34 bi-monthly per household average increase in their sewer rate or their water bill.
Well, keep in mind, this will be separate from, this will be in addition to your water and sewer rates. This is a new utility, brand new, so whatever we implement for a cost is going to be in addition to water and sewer. It's gonna be a storm sewer bill. So your storm sewer bill will be decided upon, council will have that final decision. What was included in the update in tonight's packet was basically generating a proposed revenue of $825,000. So if council decides they want to do more or less with that, then that rate will go down and be adjusted accordingly. So it's basically going to be up to what the council ultimately decides on how they want to proceed.
Continue.
Okay, thank you. So it's going to be on your water bill. It's just going to be a separate line item, and it'll be water, sewer, and then this, right?
That is one option that we have. The other option we have is to do a completely separate bill, individual bill for storm sewer, and we have to look at the pros and cons of doing water and sewer and adding the storm sewer to that or doing it on its own. We'll look at the pros and cons of doing that, and that'll be ultimately decided by council again as well.
Continue, Alderman Freeman.
And then I could be wrong on this, but aren't we currently paying on 2 IEPA loans already? And didn't we have to just increase our sewer rate in order to ensure viability on this latest one?
So what we have now, we have, correct, we just entered into our second loan agreement on the wastewater treatment plant. We have one now that's in process of being paid off. That work is completed. The second one, we have an approved contract, but the contractor has yet to begin work. Council has already passed a motion indicating that they are going to do a rate increase. However, we don't know what that rate increase will be until the project is completed and we see what that final number is. But yes, there will be a rate increase required as part of that loan agreement to cover that principal and interest payment, but we're yet to see that. Now, we recently got an amendment to that loan, which we did get some principal forgiveness, so that's a good thing. I also got a phone call last week that our $750,000 grant application for that sanitary sewer project is finally being reviewed. Don't know when we're going to hear about it, but at least it's progressed to that point. So that'll have an effect on what our ultimate rate increase will be on the sewer to pay for that improvement. So the stormwater utility, as Jeff said, allows you the capability of applying for those low interest loans for storm sewer projects, which we currently can't do.
Continue.
Okay, and so then does that have, back in February, when we were talking about our water and sewer rate review for our fiscal year 2022 budget, we are talking about also a 2-step increase for sewer beginning in January 1st, 2022, and then the second step, May 1st, 2022. Is that separate from these increases?
That would be, yes, sanitary sewer is completely separate from this discussion on storm sewer. So we don't mix water and sanitary sewer, storm sewer, they're all their individual funds, and the rate increases associated with each of those funds would be separate.
Floor is yours.
Right, I get that, but when people get their water and sewer bill, they don't.
Right, so we will have, as part of the discussion we had for our latest budget, our current budget, there was indications that we will probably need to see an increase in our water rates. We know that we're gonna have to increase the sewer rates to cover this next project we have upcoming, and ultimately the council's gonna decide what they wanna do with storm sewer. Our last, as far as rate increases in general, our last ones were in 2011, so we've gone 10 years without a rate increase, which is a good thing for everybody. We don't like to do them. We won't do them until we have to, but it's getting to the point now where we have to. And I can go into that at a future meeting, not necessarily here tonight, but I'll have some more documentation and information to provide for council on current rates and fee structure. But what we're talking about tonight with the storm sewer utility is a new one, not seen before, and that's why we need to go through if we want to proceed, our first step in proceeding is to educate the public, and we'll set up some meetings with, again, the biggest property owners in the city, because it's basically the storm sewer water utilities based on size, property size, and the amount of runoff that the properties create. So your Stellantis, your General Mills, your larger manufacturing facilities create the runoff, as well as school district is probably going to be a big one as a property owner, as well as some of the churches and stuff. So it does affect everybody. And we will, again, go through an education with the public so council can get that feedback from the public and see what they would like to prefer and what they would like to do as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Freeman. Alderman Fleury?
Thank you. I guess it's kind of a two-part question. So right now, to fix the flooding problem, what is kind of the price tag kind of generally if we fix everything? I know we're kind of doing it in stages, but what is it going to be the kind of total cost to alleviate the flooding problem?
Well, the flooding problem, as you referenced to, is probably what's referred to as the experiences that have been on the south side of town. Baxter Woodman looked at those occurrences and came up with a plan with an estimated price tag of about $42–43 million to make all of those improvements. And the reason why you focus on this is focused on the south side of town is Kishwaukee being the difference maker there. Kishwaukee River through town on the north side, the ground is mostly aggregates, a lot of sands and gravels, more porous. So when it rains, it soaks away faster, and you don't have the issues. South side of town has all the clay deposits, sediment deposits over time, so it's much more impermeable surface. So it tends to lay around and stay around. So we have a lot more existing storm sewer infrastructure on the south side of town for that very reason than we do on the north side. When the town was developed over time, nobody really paid attention to stormwater detention and stormwater activities. Since we have the building codes and subdivision codes in place now, all new development has to go through the review for stormwater detention and have those calculations and address those concerns so that they're not creating any problems further downstream within the system, within the drainage basin. So the Baxter Woodman plan looked at retrofitting basically the existing south side of town to make it to be in compliance with what we require for new development. And that's all based on a 100-year storm event. So even if you have a storm event that's more than a 100-year storm event, then you're still going to have the possibility of flooding even after you do all the improvements, but at least you've created a level playing field, if you will, throughout the entire town. So those are what was identified, and those broke those down in projects. We've started work on those. We have ones that are in place now, ones that are just about done, and ones that we are planning to do here in the near future. So we are beginning to work on that issue, but that's where that work comes from when we say the flooding problems is basically on the south side.
Right. So like I know we're still in the early stage of it, if we did this storm utility fee, then could you then apply for those loans and get those projects done quicker because you have this dedicated income and you can do it sooner as opposed to kind of piecemealing it over years because you're paying from the general fund? Right.
So the biggest benefit, I guess, that I foresee in a stormwater utility is you have that dedicated funding source. So you could do just that. You know that based on this $825,000, and we figured $750,000 of that would be available for capital improvements. Well, then you can calculate based on what the EPA loan programs change from year to year and what the rates are. So you can do a calculation and determine that, yeah, I can, for that annual payment of $750,000, I can go out and do 10 million, 12 million, 20 million, whatever that number is of a value of a project, and be able to know that you're going to be able to pay for that over time. So you can jump up and get a lot of projects done up front and then still pay, or you can decide as a council to kind of pay as you go and do smaller projects and do this one over here, this one over here, spread the benefit around, or whatever gets you as we're doing right now, we're trying to get the biggest impact for the least amount of cost to get ahead of the curve. And you can continue to do that process, and ultimately be up to council to decide how they want to do that. But the stormwater utility gives you additional options that we currently do not have.
Okay, and last question. So if the council and the public decide they don't want to do the utility because they don't want to pay any more fees, how are these projects going to be funded, and how long would that take comparatively? So if we have, the stormwater utility fee, it could take, say, 5 years to complete, but if we do it funding just from the general fund, it could take 10 years, or what's kind of the comparison there?
So I guess the best comparison would be to, the city has implemented some additional fees here in the last few years, and those additional fees have generated, based on actual receipts, roughly right around $2 million a year. So that $2 million a year goes into the general fund, and then general fund pays for police, fire, all the activities of the city. So I'll be in there battling with the police chief and the fire chief and everybody else in the city for those funds and how they should be allocated. So short of the stormwater utility, it'll be up to the council to decide how much revenue they can afford or put to these projects on an annual basis. And that does not include the street projects or the road projects. Water and sewer is paid for separately, so we're not talking water, sewer. We're basically talking about the road projects. And as you know, there's lots of roads out there that are eligible and need to have attention as well. So we try to make as much improvements as we can with the funds that are available to us. Stormwater utility provides additional funding opportunities.
Thank you.
Alderman Snow and then Alderwoman Freeman.
So in the world of the funding from this, obviously part of it goes for maintenance slash staffing to some degree. So any of that portion of the funding that occurs with this stormwater implementation would free up that fundage from the general fund for other general fund dollars. Is that a fair assumption?
Yes, and that's what was alluded to, and Jeff referenced to, where there was, what was it, 75 or 55,000? 75,000 for general maintenance type that we budget for currently in our general fund budget, that would then come out of that budget, not be included in that budget anymore. That could be budgeted for other uses and would be paid for out of the utility.
Thank you. So, the public outreach is basically going to be like a marketing tool, and typically, I think that a lot more people against a tax fee, whatever you want to call it, are going to show up to these meetings than those that are actually having flooding issues. So, we've already done some things, the Dawn Gate detention, and we're working on the low flow channel. So there may be a cheaper way to help with the flooding issue than $42 million price tag, other options and alternatives. So if we implemented this, stormwater utility, then after 5 years or 10 years, our problem on the south side is under control. Could we use that money then to do curbs and gutters and stuff like that on the north side, so that maybe we could get some of those people on board?
You broke it.
That's certainly a possibility, and storm sewer with storm sewer improvements, certainly. You could utilize the stormwater utility to pay for that portion of the infrastructure for the projects, such as Logan Avenue, where we're redoing the curbs, the inlets, the stormwater inlets, and so forth on that project. If we had a stormwater utility, you could theoretically use those funds to do that part of it, certainly.
Alderwoman Frank.
My question's for Jeff. Do you work with Baxter and Woodman to know what our problems are, and that's where you get the numbers? Or do you work with Brent? How did you come up with these figures, and where are we in relation? Is that because of what somebody else has given you?
Yeah, so when we completed the study, we had the report that was done by Baxter and Woodman. And so we reviewed and looked through the costs that were compiled for that report, and then we worked with Brent and other staff to determine a capital budget. I mean, I'll be honest, $42 million is, well beyond what could be paid for with this size fee over the next 5 years. And so it wasn't an approach where we're going to do all of this at once. It was, how do we get it to a point where you can begin to do the projects? And so it's not directly based off of the 42 million in terms of the capital cost that's included in there. It's a little pulled back from that due to the large size of the fund and the perceived, user fee impact that would result from kind of going all in, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
So again, this will be back on committee, at our next Public Works Committee, be on the agenda, and then if desired, the council can remove it from the table and we can go from there.
Okay,
Thanks, everyone.
thank you very much. All right, under 5B, Public Works 2021 MFT thermoplastic pavement striping bid tabulation. Brent?
Thank you, Your Honor. Memo in your packet, we received 5 bids for our thermoplastic pavement striping work, which is the work that's done on our new overlay streets once that work is completed. The low bid was from AC Pavement Striping in the amount of $9,770.75. I would recommend approval of that bid for the 2021 MFT thermoplastic pavement striping project, subject to IDOT approval. This work will be paid for from MFT funds.
We have a motion by Alderman Snow. Do we have a second? Second by Alderwoman Prather. Any discussion? Any questions? Any comments? All right, hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed.
Next up is our MFT Street Overlay Program bid tabulation. We received 4 bids for that work. I would recommend approval of the low bid from Rock Road Companies in the amount of $627,691.67 for the 2021 MFT Street Overlay Program. Again, subject to IDOT approval, this work will be paid for from MFT funds.
Okay, do we have a motion to accept the low bid from Rock Road for $627,691.67? Alderman Fleury, do we have a second? Alderman McGee, any discussion, any questions, any comments? Alderman Snow?
And I guess, I'm assuming we had the estimate in the 742,000. So obviously we budgeted in and around that amount. These dollars would just roll over into next fiscal year. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Alderman Stevens?
Once we okay all this, IDOT and all that, how long before they'll actually start throwing pavement down approximately?
My guess is they will be probably the first week, maybe the end of the first week in August, probably. Our hope is that we have it done before school starts, but it might not get done till towards the end of August. So we'll see what transpires, but that's the indications I've got.
Brent, is Allen Street, I can't recall, is Allen Street on that list, offhand?
Oh, I don't think so. I'll have to check. I don't remember for sure.
Right. I was just curious with traffic, that's big bus route, and with school starting, that would be.
Right, Fifth Avenue and that short section of Allen Street, those I know aren't included because those are being looked at for the reconstruction and as the 72-inch storm sewer bypass that's coming up, hopefully sooner than later. So that's what that will be part of that.
Thank you. So, We have a motion and a second then. Any other questions? If not, all those in favor to accept the Rock Road Company's $627,691.67, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. Southwest Elevated Tank Rehab revised bid. Brent?
Thank you, Your Honor. Again, memo in your packet, and attached to that memo is a couple of pictures. Apologize for the quality of pictures. And then the original memo back when we opened the bids for the Southwest Elevated Tank. Jetco has submitted a revised bid for the Southwest Elevated Tank Rehab Project in the amount of $598,780. The original bid was $771,670, which represents a reduction of $172,890. Our original budget for this project was $440,000. Our current balance in the water depreciation account is approximately $850,000. Jetco's proposed schedule for this project would be to begin in February and complete by the end of May of next year. Strand Associates, our engineer on this project, reports that recent painting projects bid in Illinois that are comparable to ours range in cost from $607,000 to $962,763. Therefore, I would recommend waiving the bidding requirement and approve the bid from Jetco in the amount of $598,780 for the Southwest Tank Rehabilitation Project. This work will be paid for from the water depreciation account number 611780. And just note that waiving the bidding requirements will require a 2/3 majority vote of the City Council.
Okay. So do we have a motion then to waive the bidding requirements and approve the bid from Jetco in the amount of $598,780? Motion by Alderman Snow, second by Alderman Porter. Alderwoman Freeman, then Alderman Snow.
Thank you. So I know, Brent, back in May, at the May 10th committee meeting, you had hoped to have this wrapped up with Jetco by the May 17th meeting. So in the meantime, I guess I'm wondering if these other two get another bite at their responsible bidding requirements, or have any of them reached out to you, or has that ship already sailed? Because I think we're still like $158,000 over budget. And I guess my next part of the question is, since we only did budget $440,000, and it's anywhere between 600 and 900 and some change, did we just severely under budget this when we did budget?
That could be a little bit of a factor. There was some recent changes in Illinois law on water tower painting that just went in effect prior to this project being out to bid. That has a factor in some of the pricing. That's why when our engineer provided the paint projects, it was specifically noted that they were Illinois paint projects, because it doesn't cost as much to paint Wisconsin water tower or an Iowa water tower at this point that it does an Illinois water tower. But we have to live within those guidelines. So I think the revised price is representative of those costs, and that's why my recommendation is to go ahead and proceed. As you say, the other two were not able to meet our responsible bidder affidavit, and I don't think if we gave them another opportunity, they would still not be able to meet our responsible bidder affidavit. For that reason, I would again recommend moving ahead with this project.
Alderman Snow, and then I know the city attorney wants to add a comment as well. So Alderman Snow.
What's the projected life expectancy of this painting and recoating sealing deal?
This will be the first paint recoat on this tank. I would hope to get 10 to 15 years at least on it. I can have further discussion with the engineer and the contractor and get a more definite answer to you on that, but that would be my expectation.
City attorney.
A question, then a comment. Brent, I can't recall, and I know I should know this, but I've forgotten. Did we already reject all the other bids?
Yes, there was a motion made to reject the bids, but we did not do anything other than that.
And that's what I recall, but I want to make sure. So what the motion tonight is actually a hybrid motion or combined motion, is the best way to phrase it. Next week, when it comes back to council, assuming it passes tonight, there'll be first a motion to waive the bidding requirements, and then there will be a second motion to actually award this contract. So just so you're aware, it'll come up as two different line items on Monday night at council.
And if council is inclined to proceed with this work, that brings it to part two, the question two for council, which goes to the two pictures that were attached. The single photo is, of course, the existing tank and the existing writing on that tank. And the two photos gives you two options of a little bit of an update or upgrade, if you will, to the labeling on the tank, if the council is so inclined to want to do that. And basically what that represents is, if you look above the mirrors and the city attorney and the clerks there, our signage that is around town, the script and everything is taken right off of that. So it basically matches that as opposed to what it looks like currently. The only difference between those two is one says welcome to on the top, similar to that, but it doesn't have all the fancy stuff. So with or without. So if you are inclined to have the work proceed, I would also need direction from council on if you want to change, if you want to leave it just the way it is as far as on the writing, or if you'd like to change to one of the two options that are being proposed as well.
Alderman Stevens?
Is there any cost difference leaving off welcome to?
I would imagine there's a little bit. I'll have to find out specifically if council, whatever council wants to do, then I'll go back to contractor and make that final determination. I would think there'd probably be a little bit of cost difference, but I couldn't tell you at this point how much.
Alderman Stone?
I guess at this point, for consistency, I think the welcome to would be a good thing. But my next question is, so when they do their work on this tank, we're not gonna, because it looks like the new versions of the lettering, minus the welcome to or not, is gonna be slightly different than what's already there on the tank right now. And I'd hate to see us have some ugly bleed over, like when you get a seal coat on a parking lot where the old lines bleed through. So just curious if, when they do this, that you won't see the shadow effect of the old stuff.
No, there'll be a prime coat put on before the finish coat, so you will not see anything.
Okay.
Of course, we
so-
could make it look vintage, I suppose, and actually make some rust and stuff on it if we wanted.
For $598,000?
Yeah.
All right,
I'd make a motion to put the welcome to start the,
well,
process.
we have a motion already, and that's kind of a separate, we'll vote on the motion, just so we're clear. Recommend waiving the bidding requirements and approve the bid from Jetco Limited in the amount of $598,780 for the Southwest Tank Rehabilitation Project. This work will be paid for from the water depreciation account number 61-1780. Waiving the bidding requirements will require a 2/3 majority vote of the council when that comes. So right now, we just have a motion as stated. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passed now. I don't know what everybody's preference was, if you wanted to, Brent, do you need to know this tonight, or we can come back Monday night if people want to ponder that, correct?
Whatever council wants to do with it, that's fine. The work's not gonna be done until next spring, so
Yeah.
we have time.
Okay, so if you want to look them over and make a choice, after you've had time to think about it, Alderman Porter?
I'd just like to recommend that Brent maybe talk to them and get a price for, how much it would cost to add the welcome to.
All right, I'll do that. I will approach the contractor, get a price for both, and have that information hopefully back in time for Monday's council meeting.
Okay, everybody happy with that? Okay. Thank you, Brent. And then lastly, we have the update on well number 4 and number 5, Brent.
Thank you, Honor. On your desk, at your desk tonight, and I apologize for the lateness in having this information to council. I don't like to do that, but in this case, that's how it turned out. Well number 4, well number 5, as you know, have been offline for some time now, and we were focusing on well number 4. Well number 4 still has issues. We have still showing bacteria counts. We have gone through two superchlorinations, so we know the bottom, I'll say the bottom of the well, we know that's been clean. That's been proven through our chemical analysis stuff, but we still are not able to get two clean readings. So the thought process is that we are getting some type of contamination from above. The next step in that process will be to determine if PFAS is present at that well. As you know, IEPA is going around in the initial sampling for PFAS. They're providing that for all the wells in the state of Illinois. However, one of the caveats they have is the well has to be online for them to do the test. Well 4 has not been online, so hence they haven't done the test, and they were not going to do it until it goes back online. I don't want to spend a lot more money on this well if the PFAS test is going to come back and they're going to recommend that we put it offline anyway. So we went ahead and did a PFAS test on our own. It's a 3-week process to get that test back. We should have those test results back next week. So if those test results come back okay, then our next step with well 4 is to determine where the contamination is coming from. We'll basically put a separator, a donut if you will, a seal between the top and the bottom, and that will be based on video camera of the well and the well casing, determine where that placement needs to be. They'll put that donut in there to basically create a seal between top and bottom, and then they'll do sampling over a period of days and get the readings back and see if the bottom stays clean and the top stays shows more colonies of bacteria, then our assumption is correct that we are having issues with the top. And what that means then is we basically have to reseal or reline the well to a point to prevent that infiltration down into the aquifer that we're pumping out to put in the system. So that's a process that we have yet to go through. We'll see what that is. I'll have more information on that at our next committee meeting, and I'll have the information back on PFAS. So that's where well number 4 is at. Well number 5, you have on your desk memo tonight. They have televised well number 5. They have removed the rock fragments that were noted in the video through the baling process. However, we have approximately 100 feet of fine aggregate buildup in the bottom of this well that, if we were to bale it, would basically take forever. So since we had removed the big fragments and stuff, we went ahead and did a pump test with sand content to see how that would come out, and the test indicated nearly 200 parts per million of sand. As a reference, 3 parts per million or less of sand is considered sand-free. So the sand issue is there, and it is a problem. The specific capacity during that test was average 2.57 during the test, and that was an average of 453 gallons per minute. The last time that we rehabbed this well back in 2011, specific capacity was around 10. After the rehabbing, specific capacity was around 10, and our gallons per minute was between 700 and 800 gallons per minute. I would hope to be able to get probably a specific capacity of around probably 8, with a pumping capacity of, I would hope to get probably 600 gallons per minute out of this well if we can have it rehabbed. So in that effort to increase well number 5's water production and remove the sand buildup, Cahoy is proposing to airlift this well. And the airlift process, it's basically vacuuming out the well under pressure, if you will, where they will seal the well off, put a vacuum to it, create a vortex, and it basically lifts everything up out of the well, and the debris and stuff, cleans it out, sucks it out, hopefully opening up the cavities, thereby increasing the water production and removing the sand content. The process is not inexpensive. Attached to my memo is the proposal from Cahoy in the amount of $97,267 to complete that work. Basically on the top side, what happens is that comes up and it goes into a filtration bag. Then basically, as we pump that up, it goes in a filtration bag, we capture the sediments, and then the water is transported then to the storm sewer system for disposal. They're estimating 30 hours worth of and I'll call it vacuuming for airlifting, for that process to be complete, given the parameters of this specific well. I would recommend waiving the bidding requirements and approve the airlift proposal for well number 5 from Cahoy Pump Service in the amount of $97,267. This work will be paid for from the Water Depreciation Fund, line item 611780, which has a current balance of approximately $850,000. Keep in mind, we just earmarked $600,000 of that for the painting of the water tower. That leaves us a balance of $250,000. Waiving the bidding requirements will require a 2/3 majority vote of the City Council.
All right, do we have a motion then to that effect? Alderman Snow, we have a second? Second by Alderwoman Prather. Any other questions, any discussion? Alderwoman Freeman?
Thank you. So Brent, I know that we took well 3 offline because of the PFAS a while ago, I think back in May. I know that's not one of our great producers, but is that back online? Is that PFAS issue been addressed?
No, it has not. We have not even started to look at that. That will be, PFAS is an expensive proposition typically. We will look at that. My guess is, if, depending on what the PFAS comes back with on 4, we are probably to the point that we're talking about new well 11 sooner than later. But it'll be interesting to see if, because 3, it's our oldest well that we have, and where it's located, and the issues we've had with it in the past, whether or not we spend the money to take care of the PFAS is probably doubtful, but again, we'll look into it and get a rough idea first, just to see if it makes sense economically to even approach to do that, but my guess would be it's probably not.
Alderman Porter?
Hey Brent, if you said this, I may have missed this, and I'm sorry if I did, but why are we waiving the bidding process in this and not getting bids from other companies?
Well, that's certainly an option. We could do that. We went to bid for the rehabilitation work at well number 5. It just did not include this airlift proposal, and they were the lowest responsible bidder, and that's why they got this work. So we could go through that exercise and bid that and see where it comes, but that's going to push us back probably at least 60 days, 90 days, and we've been fortunate so far that we haven't had any other well issues. We have 3 wells down right now, so that's never a good thing, especially when it's 100 degrees and dry for a week. So far, like I said, I hate to say that Chrysler being shut down, is a good thing, but in this case for the water system, it's been a good thing because it hasn't put the demands that we normally see. So we have been fortunate. So the sooner we can get well 5 back online, the better off we'll be.
And Brent, so well number 5, the vacuuming process that you're talking about, historically, have we done any of that on any of our current wells? And if so, what is the what are you hoping for?
We have not done this process before. This will be new for us. Basically, it's a hybrid. The other ways you can rehabilitate, they have air burst where they send air pulses down and to open up the formations for water production, or they, the old-fashioned way is you run down and ran the dynamite, if you will, and did the blast, control blast to do that, to open up, fracture basically the aquifer to get the water in. So because of this technology and the pressures that they use and the suction that they use, It's a modified, it's not directly like an air burst, but it's close to that, similar to that. And according to Cohoy, their record of doing this method, the production and those things increase as well. I inquired about doing air bursting before we did the vacuuming, and they said, I think you're going to want to do the go ahead and vacuuming, and I think that's going to take care of it for you. They didn't want us to spend the extra money to do the air bursting if we didn't have to, and they don't think that we're going to have to. They think this will take care of it.
Okay, thank you. So, I'm sorry, Alderman Stevens.
The airlifting that I'm familiar with this is they stick a large diameter casing down with an air line that goes up in the pipe. They push air in, and then that creates the vacuum and sucks everything up.
And hopefully it'll be everything. And we've already baled the biggest stuff, so right now we're looking at just basically the fines that are left. And then if there's any structure along the cavities too that are loose condition, it has a tendency to work those further loose and stuff, which will be a good thing too, to get that all cleaned up so we don't have an issue after we put it back online.
Okay. Thank you for answering that. Anything else for Brent? If not, we have a motion and a second then to recommend waiving the bidding requirements and approval of the airlift proposal for well number 5 from Cohoy Pump Service in the amount of $97,267. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. And I think that's it. So do we have a motion to adjourn? Oh, come on. Motion by Alderwoman Frank. Second. Alderman McGee. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? For the record, let the record show we adjourned at 7:16. Thank you, everybody.